All right, and we are live. Thanks, Amy, for getting this kicked off, and thanks to Valerie for what a inspiring keynote to get this started off today. I'm gonna take the second session today. We're gonna be talking about how to build your AI business case. And just a quick little introduction here. My name is Brian Hayden. I'm a solution architect here at Concurrency. And just a little bit about me. I'm an avid outdoorsman. You're going to see themes like that, throughout all my talks. I spend pretty much most of my time with my family, two kids, traveling in the mountains and outdoor hiking, foraging, fishing, hunting, all that kind of stuff. But I'm a nerd at heart, and while I don't get to build as many tools as I like to, I still love getting my hands dirty, soldering things, making toys. And a fun little fact about me is I'm a twin, and sometimes I have them fill in for me on these talks. But follow me on LinkedIn. There's QR code here, and love to connect with you and talk about AI. It's one of the hot topics and one of my passions. All right, so let's talk a little bit about like the AI frontier. And there's a lot of different ways. I think the winding path that Valerie had on her last slide was, I didn't steal it. I was actually thinking about this myself. But in the industry, there's a lot of different paths that you can take. You can go the high code route, where you're going to make a lot of mistakes. You're going to wind up investing a lot of time, but you're going to learn a lot of things and find out what works and doesn't. Or you can take the simpler path. Some little statistics about what's going on in the industry right now. 67% of organizations are using AI regularly. That is a study that was just completed in January 25, so that is fairly recent, and that was across 48,000 respondents. So it's pretty widely being used in most organizations. 92% of companies are using it in some way, and a lot of times that's more in the like commodity space or heavy usage in marketing and areas like that. But it has moved into an inflection point. It is not hype anymore. Organizations are using it, and they have to figure out how to navigate this. So leaders are seeing a lot of ROI and adoption rates going up, and it's making AI a general purpose technology that really can redefine your competitive landscapes. However, just call to attention, 58% of organizations that were polled in this KMPG study view AI as somewhat untrustworthy. So we're going to talk a little bit about these topics here today, and help you realize value and calculate some of the ROI. But before I get started, I wanted to break down AI into two distinct lanes. We have in the commodity lane, these are tools, these are SKUs, these are licenses that you can purchase. So think of it as Copilot, Microsoft's M365 Copilot, the tool that's embedded into your Teams, your Word, things like that. And even to a certain degree, the Copilot Studio. The advancements that Copilot Studio has made in the last year allow you to, with just a click of the button, 5 minutes, create some sort of knowledge-based chatbot that leverages information from things like your website or a set of SharePoint documents and quickly get that deployed to an environment inside of your Teams, inside of your Microsoft Teams. But then there's the other aspect of it where there's real engineering that comes into play. You're going to need data scientists, you're going to need a partner, you're going to need other tooling that's out there. And that's real engineering, product engineering. And those often have more ROI long term, but they also take a lot more investment to get kicked off. And one of Concurrency's favorite eye charts here is kind of a breakdown of how we look at commodity and product engineering and what tools and use cases that you might want to consider when you're working with different technologies. So on the left side, you're going to see what we define as the lanes of commodity and product engineering. And when we first did this chart over a year ago, it was about a 50-50 split. So public AI and commodity AI were the commodity tools. But as I just described about Copilot Studio, you're starting to see some of these semi-custom use cases. Chatting with ServiceNow, those are now commodities. I mean, ServiceNow has great AI tools built into it. Microsoft has, like I said, with the Copilot Studio, these commodity tools are starting to grow in their usage, and it really is going to shrink that product engineering into a smaller and smaller use case as these technologies start to accelerate. So let's let's dive in a little bit to this unprecedented momentum. So one of the latest studies that I found was comparing year over year, 23 to 25, that the adoption and current planned use of AI in the organizations was in 2023, 55% of companies were using or plan to use generative AI inside of their organization. And in 2024, that number accelerated to 75%. I expect it to be in the mid to upper 80s this year, as most companies are really focusing on those use cases and how they bring those to market. And then to think about the investment that they're making and how these technologies are impacting their business. On average, companies are seeing about $3.70 return on every dollar invested. And some of the top performers, we're going to classify those as disruptors. So organizations that are really in the top 5% of their AI use cases, they're seeing ROI calculations in 10 to 1. I have links to, thanks, I see this question in the chat. I can provide some links to this. These charts came from a study that was published on Microsoft's by Microsoft. So, but we'll share that. I definitely have a link to it in here. And by the way, I love answering questions and free flowing a little bit. So please take advantage of the Q&A. Take advantage of the chat. I'll try to keep my eye in two different places, and we'll see if I can get all your questions answered. So what I was driving at is the message here is very clear. AI can absolutely deliver real value to the organization, and that's today. And what's going to happen throughout the rest of this year, 2026, is just going to make those numbers from 370 into, take everybody into that 10 to 1 type of return on investment. And really high performing organizations, ones that have actually figured out how to scale this, are going to be able to take much more advantage of it. And the way you get into those high performing organizations is by starting today. Like, you can't wait in order to get into this technology. The longer that you wait to start playing with AI and use cases in your organization, the longer it's going to take you to scale it at the organization level. So here's a couple of quotes. Satya Nadella always has a few quotes that I like to put in here, but AI is the defining technology for our times. It is augmenting human ingenuity and helping us solve some of society's most pressing challenges. I mean, AI is no longer about isolated use cases or just tech experiments. It is a strategic capability for a lot of organizations. Almost half of tech leaders today say that AI is now fully integrated into their core business strategy, meaning that they're actually planning around this. And they're doing things to enable AI in the organization and make it real. So it's not a side quest. It's basically the main trail, and getting to the summit is going to give you a competitive advantage. So here's a report from the World Economic Forum around the workforce strategies that organizations are providing. And I need my reading glasses. I can't see the chart to read the numbers. One of my coworkers here is laughing at me right now. All right, 77% reskilling and upskilling the workforce. Thanks, Thomas. I appreciate the support here, the mental support.
12% organization has low exposure to AI. 12% saying they have low exposure. Um, the amount of time that strategic leaders are looking at what is it going to take to get their workforce skilled up, they are starting to really think about these strategies. And how are they actually using it, right? So organizations are starting to increasingly use AI in multiple functions. So doing it in just one way, just doing your meeting recordings, not good enough. You need to start being able to cross utilize the Gen AI tools that are available to you. And so being able to use multiple functions, multiple Gen AI tools to piece and stitch things together is an imperative. And so getting it to bridge multiple disciplines in your organization and is something that we're going to have to start to focus on. But AI's potential spans a lot of different efficiency gains, new business models, transform customers' experiences. These are all great opportunities, but then there's responsibilities here too, right? So with great power comes great responsibility. Um, we have to think about things like fairness and security and compliance. Broad adoption is only going to succeed in your organization if AI is used ethically and transparently. So you have to think about how this is going to impact not only your bottom line, which is important, but how it's going to impact the people that use this technology. So 20 to 30% improvements in productivity, speed, revenue. These are all things that are real and that we're seeing with our customers today. But you have to be able to do it with a moral compass and commit to doing AI responsibly. From day one, it has to be part of your strategy. So what's the vision? I like to think of AI as a new mountain range that I'm going to go and explore. And at the summit, when I get there, we're going to realize a large return on our investment. Our organization is going to be a lot more agile, and we're going to be able to leverage innovation or innovative technologies in ways that we can't even imagine. But how you get there is going to be a path that we have to chart together. But we have to plan this route, and we actually have to pack and bring the right tools in order to do this. So the goal really is to empower you to lead your organizations and assure that you can get some quick wins along the way and have a durable strategy laid out so that you can be successful in the long run. We're going to roadmap some defining high impact AI use cases. I've got some great examples about things that we're talking to and working with our customers today. And then we're going to talk about the tools like Microsoft Fabric and Azure's Azure AI Foundry and Copilot and Copilot Studio. These are tools that we're going to use to scale in a modular and hopefully a future resistant. I don't like to use future proof, but a future resistant way. So in order to achieve those, you have to think about the people, processes, and the culture in the organization. AI implementations require strong leadership, not only to be supportive of the initiatives that you want to pursue, but also to clearly articulate what the priorities of the organization are so that executive leadership or the leadership of the organization is not going to get in the way. We do have to modernize our technologies. I had a interesting conversation with a customer just last week that's debating on whether to stay on premise or where their costs might be a little bit lower, or they're going to start leveraging, moving some of their data center workloads into the cloud. And I brought up to them, like, you can't do some of these things that you're talking about if you leave your data in your data center, that it's not feasible, practical, or economical for you to run AI workloads in a data center that you own. Some of these chips that run large language models, are several $100,000 a piece. And so, it just isn't going to be feasible for an organization that has revenue of, 400 or 500 million to be able to invest in like that. So you have to start thinking about what your technology landscape looks like. But it's not just about modernizing your technology. There's also modernizing the way that your business and your technical teams work together. So you have to invest in that as a culture, so that you can have a successful roadmap and a plan. And then there's data security, data protection, data quality, cloud security. You have to do this in a safe way. We've heard a lot of organizations ask us about, is my data going to be safe? How is this information going to be used? Is it private? Is it public? And so you have to think about that at the very beginning as well. And then having some sort of a governance framework in place is important, but it's not the end all be all. In fact, less than 5% of the disruptors in the industry, organizations that are heavily leveraging AI, have a comprehensive strategy. I mean, that might be frowned upon with some organizations, but at the same time, not having a really complex governance framework allows them to be a little bit more agile. But most of the organizations that I'm talking to have some sort of a roadmap of governance in place. Even if it's only a 12 or 18-month roadmap, they're starting to think about how they're going to govern and deliver responsible AI, in the future. So let's talk a little bit. I've got a poll here. So I'm going to get this poll going. I want to ask, what domain in your business do you feel is the most ripe for AI? So go ahead and fill some of this out, and let's see where some of these answers kind of land. I'll keep an eye on it, but a lot of organizations have a lot of use cases. Some of the common ones that come up for us, as I'm seeing, the answers come in, are human resources and talent. Customer service is really popular. But sometimes it's really easy to have domains that you think are ready for it, but you make some of the wrong choices. So one caution I have is, make sure that when you evaluate the use cases that you're choosing the right one. An example of sometimes a great use case is the find my order, find my product, where's my pizza, kind of scenario. And we worked with a customer that was trying to solve for exactly that. And a big challenge for them was that they had 12 ERPs that, didn't really have consistent data across them, and it became real messy. And while we could find the order in the best case, the easy path. We only got about 30% of the orders right. And it wound up being a big investment that if they would have thought about the use case a little bit ahead of time and done some of the data validation early on, that they might not have pursued that. So successful AI adoption really starts by picking the right use cases. Find the ones that are going to lead to real business value rather than just wandering like aimlessly through like your AI experiments. You have to not only look for those that are possible, but also find ones that are aligned to your strategic goals as an organization. Where are the pain points and where does it unlock, real value? All right, we've given a few minutes for people. Looks like customer service, operations and supply chain, IT and cybersecurity were the top three use cases. All are great, to be honest with you. I find that the customer service and support, a lot of times you have customer service that has documentation that is, in a Q&A kind of, I have this problem, how do I solve it? So generative AI is really good at, finding answers in those kind of scenarios. And you can use commodity tool set. Operations and supply chain, yeah, it can get a little messy, but it can be, it can be a good use case. And IT and cybersecurity, I think Valerie talked a little bit about that use case, being able to search through a lot of multimodal information sources using generative AI. Fantastic use case as well. So hopefully, at the end of this talk, we're going to understand how to map out the quick wins, figure out which ones are going to be a little bit of the longer journeys, and try not to find any of the dead ends that are going to exist. So let's start with how do I get started? Start out with like business pains and goals. Ground your AI initiatives in concrete business needs. So for example, where are we trying to go as a business and what obstacles are in our way? And let's evaluate if AI is a good tool for us to be able to overcome that. A lot of times, most of the top use cases when we start looking at ROI, they're going to be centered around increasing customer satisfaction, marketing, sales, are great areas there where the interactions with individuals get more prompt and get more accurate. Efficiency gains. We talk to customers all the time about some sort of automation that can leverage AI to make sense of the messy data that people are working with on a day-to-day basis. Revenue growth, risk reduction. These are all, areas where we're seeing people kind of key in, but cast a wide net and use brainstorming sessions, hackathons, AI ideation competitions. Was talking to a customer yesterday who is looking at gamifying, some of the AI initiatives that they have. And I thought that was a really fantastic. I thought that was a really fantastic idea for them to do. Question in here: what are some ways to fairly estimate ROI? Yep, John, I actually do have a framework in place that we're going to share here in just a minute. But let's talk about some of like the use cases that I find to be compelling. We've done a couple of these PO, AR, AP matching scenarios. And the complexity here is that you often get information coming from a couple of different sources. Sometimes it's in an ERP system. Sometimes you're getting emails of invoices of POs, images of checks that come in. Somebody has to match that up to a set of data that lives in a different system. And these are great matching scenarios where we can automate some of that logic and eliminate the human effort to match the cases where things match up perfectly. So I've got a check for $1,000. The customer had a PO for $1,000. Everything matches up. It's great. We're going to push that through. We don't need a human to read the check. AI is perfectly capable of reading the check efficiently, and we can match those scenarios up. Another use case that we run into quite a bit is quoting automation. So a customer sends in an email or sends in a PO, and it could be a Teams message, it could be a chat message, something like that. And what happens is that a sales rep, has to go and search for the part number, validate the SKU, make sure it's available, and then generate a quote, put it into CRM, and then it's all ready to go. And those are typically really easy to automate at this point. One of our favorite stories, started a couple of years ago, building essentially our own LLM, in order to process a really complex, like intricate language that was business specific in like steel and producing like steel manufacturing. And we had to train a language model in order to figure out what these acronyms, what these dimensions mean. And that was a lot of fun. Took a year of real AI engineering to do that. But these are tools that are available now out of the box. I mean, we can use Azure AI Foundry, to do some of that. Language translation for us, readily and quickly. And then the document intelligence tools have just gotten better and better at being able to read invoices. Favorite story, one of my customers said, we get POs, sometimes they're just a picture of a napkin that somebody wrote something down on, and she wasn't kidding. She actually showed me the picture of the napkin order, and we can actually translate that. But let's think about this, like how we're going to do this at the organization level. A couple of good examples. Now we got to start mapping this. A good strategy is to have a framework in place, and concurrency does this like three-step, kind of process, where first we'll do a like a kickoff and kind of a strategic, level setting with the organization. We're really trying to get the executive team on board to give us not just permission, but give us, clarity and direction from a strategic level where they want to invest and how they want to invest. An outcome of that's going to be kind of a state of the state address to the rest of the team. And then we're going to go into like a secondary workshop where we're going to get business leaders from throughout the organization, even some of the like frontline workers as well, and bring them to the table to start brainstorming on ideas. We will get, depending on the size of the group, sometimes, hundreds of ideas. And that's a great backlog for us to be able to evaluate. And then after we've gotten these ideas categorized, cataloged, and done a little bit of math with them, we'll do deep dive workshops to look at like how we're going to prioritize these ideas, and then solutioning, like, is it possible? We'll look at some of the data elements of it and get a good feel of if it's even possible. And that's actually where I typically come into the picture. It's one of my favorite activities, doing these deep dives and ideating around it. But out of these envisioning workshops, what we're going to do is we're going to get essentially a spreadsheet, list of the ideas that came out, and then we try to align those to the different business units. And then we'll take a look at what the most likely tool set that we want to use for that. And why that is important is because if we can push this into Microsoft Copilot, the effort becomes really small. It's really about coaching individuals on how to leverage these tools. If we're doing it in Copilot Studio, again, it can be a commodity tool set, and the effort might be more of like a 2. But we also want to identify the ones where, hey, there aren't really a lot of commodity tools. Optimization scenarios typically fall into this area where we really have to dive deeper into the data and build models and predictive models to be able to look at what a forecast would look like. So our envisioning sessions will run through these scenarios and provide this as an output, and that is kind of a guidepost for the organization. And so when you look at ROI and start thinking about it, it's important for you to kind of understand when we use these different tools, they're going to be, a large amount of effort potentially, but there's also a large amount of value in doing that. I had a conversation about a forecasting optimization scenario with a customer that spends $20 million annually on temporary labor. And essentially what they do is the day before the work has to be done in the production line, they calculate, I need 100 people to do this amount of work. And so they place the order and the people show up the next day. And individuals that show up, they're going to have to get paid for the entire day. That's how their contract works, whether the work is ready for them or not, or whether they have forecasted correctly. And so they have about 25% of over capacity that they order annually. They've been measuring this for a couple of years. And that's pretty far off from like an industry standard when you get into optimization. So we, took a look at it, and while it was an expensive project, we could get an ROI out of that in 6 months or less. So really, millions of dollars in savings were available to us. Millions of dollars of investment were probably going to be required to do it, but the ROI is pretty justifiable. But as you can see on this chart, is that different tools have different complexity. So the effort is smaller for things like Copilot and Copilot Studio, but doing advanced AI analytics or data analytics or building something custom, obviously a lot of effort. But when we typically embark on those journeys, we're looking at ones that have a lot of payoff as well.
All right, so people are talking about frameworks. Not every idea is a good one or a doable one, and so having some sort of a systematic framework is important. Microsoft has a BTX Lens framework that they like to talk about, and really what we're doing is we're examining the business value, what kind of experience you need in order to do it, from a need perspective or from a desirability. And then what is the technology feasibility for each one of these? And what we could do is we can score that and align those to a matrix that looks at, impact versus the execution. So the degree of the executional fit versus the degree of strategic business impact. And then we're going to break these into 4 quadrants of research where there's high business impact and a low degree of executional fit. So like how hard is it for us to be able to do that? So there's research, shelve, accelerate, or incubate. And if we do this correctly, it's going to inform us on where we want to invest our dollars. So before we look at an example, what we really are trying to establish is how do we focus on high impact and feasible. Both of those are really important words to consider use cases. But also important is select a balanced portfolio of use cases. You don't want to put all your eggs in one basket. Don't do just the quick wins. You need to start investing in some of the harder ones as well, because you're going to find information out about your organization and what your data quality is, what your governance strategy, how that's going to be impacted. But accelerate the quick wins, because a lot of times when you can demonstrate value to the leadership, you're going to build momentum and you're going to gain support for more projects and more complex projects, right? And don't just chase some of the cool use cases. There's a lot of fun ones that are out there, but they're not really aimed at your business strategy. So don't lose sight of that. And approach each one of these with an intentional plan. We like to start off with a pilot or a proof of concept, before we roll into, some of the more heavier lift research and incubate kind of issues. How deep do you typically go at the beginning to define how ROI would be measured each potential idea? Back in napkin, defined formula. Some of our customers are asking us to dive pretty deep. We actually, I've got a calculation that's going to show you how deep that we actually go in some of that. So stay tuned for that coming up. All right, let's take a real world example. We went through our ideation. I've got a list of 3 ideas. The first was a sales forecasting agent. And the second one was employee help desk for Copilot. This is going to automate IT support. And then somebody else came up with an idea that floated to the top around procurement optimization. So auto negotiating with our suppliers. So we used the framework and we applied some scores on high impact and feasibility. And we found that the sales forecasting agent and the employee help desk Copilot, both wound up into our magic quadrant of accelerate. So we're going to want to kick off 1 and 2 kind of immediately, because we're pretty sure we're going to get some quick ROI off of that. But we don't want to ignore the research one. So what we advised them to do was, hey, take that 3rd use case of procurement optimization, and take a small team to start exploring that a little bit. Look at the data integrity. How valuable is the information that you have available for this? What are the legal constraints before we can even get started with this? And if we do it this way, you get your resources, your people optimally allocated, and get some of the wins on the board, and get people actually interested and excited.
planting seeds for like the bigger wins that are going to come down in the pipe. So before you can kick this off, we've got the executive team in alignment, but I need to give them a story before they're going to give me a budget, to work with. So a important thing to remember is that every time that you select a use case, you have to build the story, and build it for the executive team to be able to sponsor it. And so by doing this, you're going to link it to the strategic objectives of the organization. Hopefully you can align this to like your organization's North Star, ground it in some of the strategic context that your executive team has laid out for you. Clearly state the pain that the organization is feeling. Level set on what an outcome is going to look like. How are we going to measure that success when we get there? And then provide somewhat of a solution, snapshot. So when stakeholders see that an AI project is going to help them reach the KPIs that they're measured against, you're going to gain allies, and funding, for the implementation. So this can help like turn AI from a shiny object to a mission critical initiative that everybody wants to help and make sure is successful. Amy, I can't see the Q&A. Is there any questions that have come up that I haven't thought about?
Not yet.
Okay. All right. So how do I build my AI business case? We talked a little bit about it. Every great idea needs a compelling business case to get funded and supported by the organization. So we need to define very clear objectives and KPIs. Look at things like cost savings, revenue increases, productivity gains. CSAT is, something that a lot of organizations are measuring. So that's an important one. Usually, that's KPI that you can measure against. And then error reduction. I brought up some of these like AP, AR, use cases. Error reduction comes into play quite a bit. You make a mistake and, you have to go chase $100,000 bill, later. Establish a baseline. Do you know what those numbers are now? I mentioned the CSAT scores that organizations track pretty regularly. So yeah, that's a baseline that we can measure against. If we implement this, we expect it to go to this level, and we can do it. Estimate your revenue gains, cost savings. We typically are looking at historical data. That provides the biggest basis of what we're going to expect and helps us to develop those KPIs. And then talk with or look at industry experts and what they're seeing, and how you can measure against that. I mentioned like the labor optimization, story. Roughly speaking, labor optimization should always fall into like the 15% range. When you're planning things like how to staff a restaurant or how to staff a grocery store. Those are industry standards that we can measure against. And when we see things like 25%, we know that there's a really strong opportunity for us to close that gap. Identify and assess what kind of costs are going to be there. And it's not just like what you're going to pay a partner or the development internal costs. There's run rates, there's data acquisition, there's potentially infrastructure, whether that's cloud or on-premise like IoT devices. Make sure that you're accounting for those kinds of costs that are going to be incurred. And then what are the intangible benefits? And while those aren't going to be directly resulting in ROI calculations, they're important for the decision makers of the organization. Can I increase my brand's reputation? Can I increase my employee satisfaction? Very difficult things to quantify and translate to dollars and cents, but they're things that your organization is likely to care about. And then, calculate the ROI. And I've got an example coming up that we're going to go through how we did that with one of our recent projects. And then monitor, make sure that you have the ability to monitor your KPIs and the willingness to adjust, as well.
crafting a data story. So start with problem and opportunity, solution and use case, calculate the benefits and ROI, and eventually you get down to your projected outcomes. And if you can paint a picture of achievable value, you make the decision a no-brainer for the people that have to give you the money. So I promise this quite a bit. Here is how we broke down one of these particular use cases. So looked at an invoicing situation for a customer. And in one area of the business that we're going to start with for the pilot, they get around 22,000 invoices annually that they have to be processed. And they've got an army of soldiers that's their day job. They go through and they click buttons to make sure that the invoices get paid. Or that they're collecting money for the invoices. On average, it takes about 15 minutes per invoice. So we do the math. 12,000, it's actually 22 times 15 minutes is 5,500 hours. And we get to like 2.75, full-time employees. So next in the calculation is what's the loaded cost of my employee? In this case, it was 105K. And so we could run the math and we said that if you do this project, the labor savings that you're looking at is 288K in year one. Now, is it 1 year, 2 year, 3 year that you're looking to get your ROI? But here's a good example of how we perform that calculation. Other things to be looking at are, this is reducing my costs of, operating costs by X amount. Other scenarios are, can I increase my sales by Y? The sales quoting is a really interesting use case. A lot of organizations, time to quote matters. So if you're the first person that responds to an RFP or some sort of a quote request, you're going to win 32% more sales if you're the first person to do that, or whatever the number is. So by being able to respond faster and more automated faster, you can increase the sales. Or saving manual work. Like those are like 3 really good things to think about when you're trying to develop KPIs. So tally up the investment. Your ongoing costs include things like development effort, infrastructures, and now you can create a credible net ROI within a relevant timeline, whether it's 1 year, 2 years. And this is where we get to that 3.7, times ROI on AI spend. So rough order of magnitude on this project, it was a little shy of $100,000 investment, leveraging a mix of low code and code. So you can see that a 3x, ROI gets you cost savings pretty quickly. Do your projects consider full replacement, or there should be guidance of human in the loop in the consideration? Great question, Rob. So an approach that Concurrency likes to use is POC to pilot, pilot to production. And so we're trying to de-risk the investment that the organizations are making before you have to bite off a big chunk. And so pilot typically is a human in the loop. And often cases, even when you get into like a production state, we leave the human in the loop while still realizing some of the value that this engagement led to. And then eventually we start to remove the human in the loop once we feel comfortable with it. Once implemented, what are the ongoing costs of maintaining the infrastructure to support AI-based solutions? Alexander, that's a really complex calculation in some scenarios. If we're looking at lower code, it's easier to calculate. But even with Azure, AI Foundry, there's very easy metrics that you can look at and compute. So you're looking at things like token count, number of requests, and we absolutely can help organizations figure that out. If you don't remove the FTEs saved, then it is only a soft cost ROI. Mark, that's a great point. Recently worked with a customer and small accounting department, AP/AR matching. they had a individual that retired in the organization, and that was, this person's job was to process all these account payables, look up the numbers in the bank, and we did this project. It took us, I think, 6 or 8 weeks to get it to a pilot state. And we were able to match 80 to 90% of the AP amounts that were coming in, using our solution. And so they didn't fire anybody, which is good. What they did is they just didn't fill that position that was vacated. So you might not see the FTEs until you have turnover. And then you decide that you're going to reduce it. Another important consideration around time saving is recently worked with an ROI with a sales organization. It was part of their sales organization, and the ROI actually translated to I saved 15 minutes a day for the salesperson, and the salesperson's measured their major KPIs. How many people did I talk to today? Not outside sales, but like meetings and stuff like that. So by saving an average of 15 minutes a day, that freed up, many hours of them to be able to have cold calls. And then we knew what the conversion rates on average were for the organization. And we could say, by freeing up this 15 minutes a day, I can give them X number of opportunities, which are going to result in X number of close. And so it's not always just a soft ROI. There actually are a little harder ROIs that you can calculate on that, but that's a really good point. Doing AI doesn't necessarily mean that you're going to fire people or let them go. Let's see, I've got 4 minutes left, so I'm going to probably skip through a couple of these slides. Emphasize the 3 key business case factors. So most organizations are going to look at cost savings, revenue, what the revenue upside is, and does this actually give me a competitive advantage? So those are the 3 areas that you're going to want to focus on. That's the language of your C-suite. Those are the senior leaders that are going to decide whether they want to invest in this project. And it's important for you to really highlight those. Investing this dollar amount in this AI solution in the next 12 months is likely to yield this amount of benefit. That's what they want to see. That's what's going to get them excited about it. And that's the kind of message that really secures the green light for you to go ahead with a project. Risk and governance. I chart here a little bit, but these are the typical things that organizations are asking about. Data quality, data access, model bias, security and privacy, hallucinations, accuracy. These are all things that organizations are asking us to address. And so you want to think about these before you get into it. But what are some of the ways that we stop that? Fabric, I would just say, I'm going to start by saying, using the Microsoft ecosystem has a cohesive governance and security strategy when your data is living within the same ecosystem and the same data estate. So a lot of our solutions have a data foundation grounded in Fabric, and we'll use things like Azure AI Foundry, Copilot Studio, and things along those nature to bring everything together. So a data layer based on Fabric, your AI layer based on Azure OpenAI, and then how I actually get this to people through something like Copilot Studio or a low-code platform is typically how we would like to look at things. Sometimes that's not possible. A customer that I'm working with has Sitecore for content management for their website, and so need to do code in some of those cases. But if you can focus on using Microsoft's AI platforms, that gives you a head start, so that you don't have to think about external tools, third-party tools to manage the governance. Microsoft Fabric, just a quick understanding what these tools are. It's an end-to-end data platform, that unifies data engineering, your data warehousing,
analytics and governance all in one place. I see a question here about the governance around PII. Microsoft Purview is designed specifically for this. It can automate classification and tagging of the information that's in the system so that you don't have to review it manually. It can be done in an automated fashion. And by using something like Microsoft Fabric, you're breaking down the data silos and ensuring that you have a single source of truth, which is absolutely critical for some of these more complex AI projects that we're working on. We're trying to simplify, the data management. It's all in a single place. We can do real-time analytics. We can do data science work. We're not moving data between different platforms in order to get the kind of results that we're looking for. We talked a little bit about Azure AI Foundry, formerly the OpenAI service. This is a great playground and also a enterprise capable platform for you to be able to deploy not just like the most well-known models, but many models are available in from Hugging Face or from other from other open source areas that you can run in a safe environment. And that is a critical component of it. Understand that when you're leveraging something like Azure AI Foundry, those models, while they're open source models, they're privately deployed inside of Azure and inside of your tenant. And that keeps all of your data staying within your organization's Azure tenant. And then a heavy basis of what we do from a modality standpoint, or where people leverage these tools, are enabling these in Microsoft Copilot through Copilot Studio. We can deploy custom agents from Copilot Studio into Copilot. We can bring Copilot Studio chat interfaces to public sources. It doesn't have to be private. We have a variety of different use cases. I would be remiss if I didn't talk about agents. There was a question in Valerie's keynote a little bit earlier talking about MCP, A to A, and I was did a lot of plugs for people on LinkedIn as well. I found this like really great breakdown of different agentic patterns that we're starting to see emerge. And the multi-agent orchestration is something that we're really starting to look into and start to implement, from a robust, scalable architecture standpoint. So if I create smaller skills, smaller agents that can be reused in multiple use cases, I can not have to build something to hit my transportation system every single time. It's not a new thing. I can just use it in different agents. So that multi-agent orchestration is one that we're really looking at heavily. And then like the MCP being able to perform actions, and orchestrate actions around different tooling, absolutely something that we start to see a lot more adoption and interest in. So a couple of slides to wrap this up. What are some tidbits that I can leave you with as you embark on your AI journey? Aim for the quick wins. Find some of the low-hanging fruit. Make sure that your company is taking advantage of Copilot, empowering individuals to use these tools inside of Microsoft Teams. Pilot things in a smaller area and scale that out. And then probably the most important thing is celebrate the early wins. Celebrate the wins, not even early ones, just celebrate them all. The more you can get the leadership to recognize what you're doing, the more that they're going to want to invest, into other projects as well. So don't be shy about broadcasting your victories. Share these success metrics with the C-suite and within the organization. Long-term vision, think about platforms and think about building blocks. I talked about the multi-agent. You want to focus on things that have a small scope but high in payoff, but you want to be able to reuse, some of the things that you've used in a multi-agent world. And as importantly, bring this into your culture, cultivate AI talent, encourage people to use it. That is probably the biggest barrier roadblock for organizations is the adoption. And don't forget about the responsible governance in AI. Your executives aren't going to let you forget that. They're absolutely going to push it. But it's important for you to be thinking about safety and governance and how it impacts individuals when you do it. And here's some traps to avoid. Uh, Definitely keep the executive team support in mind. You have to have that, or these projects, I've seen them get shut down. Even though they provided a lot of value, the executive team wasn't aligned with AI, and they weren't able to realize that. Don't get overly onerous about your use cases and ROI. There's a lot of variability into it. The ROI is going to be there if you did your calculations up front, but don't get too hung up on it. And don't hinge all your bets on one single project. Find a couple of different projects that you can experiment on so that if one or two of them doesn't work out, you've got a couple other success stories that you can call out. Um, all right, we got 4 minutes for you guys to get to your next talk. So how can we help? Please, please, please give me your feedback. Would love to hear what you guys thought about this talk. So click the link that's in the chat or scan this QR code on the screen. Let me know what you thought, what I could do better, where I could spend a little bit more time for the next time. And with that said, thanks very much for your time. And I'll stick around for a minute or two if anybody has any last questions. All right, we'll see you later at one of the other events. Hope you're enjoying the summit.